Captain Avery Reynolds harbored a strong aversion. It has always been that way during tranquil days following her return from the Middle East. Where she was stationed in the United States, the Air Force operates fighter jets. High-risk operations. Subsequent to substitution of her military uniform in dark blue, the outfit of a commercial airline enhances her perception. The alarm remained live. It was early afternoon upon her arrival at John F. Kennedy International Airport. As prepared to, she would fly to London. She had crossed the Atlantic on numerous occasions before. But with every new journey, she felt the same wave of caution. She greeted the ground crew with a smile and an uplifting remark. She possessed acquired knowledge in the Air Force regarding every team member, which is crucial for the handshake transaction exchanges of cordialities, and ensure the presence of all individuals aligned. Following several brief inspections upon entering the cockpit, she cherished that location and consistently inhaled deeply. Inhale prior to positioning on the left. Buckling her seat belt, optimizing the headset microphone. Good afternoon, Captain Reynolds stated to her. The first officer, a young man named Mark Bentley, had received a promotion to co-pilot only a few months ago. Acknowledged his talent, but also that inexperience is an inherent characteristic. Someone continuing to accumulate flight hours. Good afternoon, Mark, she responded. Steadfast, composed voice that had become her own. Are you excited about London? She asked with a smile that belied her apparent apprehension. Continually. I am closely monitoring the forecast for strong winds over the North Atlantic, which could potentially result in a turbulent journey. Avery nodded in affirmation. Indeed. We shall adhere to the appearance of a veteran, oversee all operations and assess the condition. We will manage any turbulence when it arises. Preparations persisted. Frank Delaney, the chief mechanic, entered the cockpit to provide the conclusive maintenance report. The captain of the airline, a robust man with a graying mustache, had served in that capacity for decades. All items on the maintenance checklist are accounted for. The engines were inspected in the specified order in the morning. The systems are operational, the settings are in place, and the report contains all the necessary information. Each line, everything, indeed manifested as adherence to regulations. Although one item was noted, her attention was drawn to a letter regarding a little fluctuation in the oil pressure off engine number 2 from the preceding night. The document, however, determined that the fluctuation remained within permissible boundaries. Avery placed the document on Frank's panel. This concerns me somewhat. Even if it is, do you believe we can operate within the established parameters? Reassess it, perhaps enlist assistance from another individual. Conduct a personal inspection of engine number 2. Before we board. Delaney gazed at her with a mildly irritated demeanor. However, he upheld his professional demeanor. It has been verified twice. Captain, it is customary to experience minor pressure variations in actuality. This aircraft is prepared for departure. She expressed gratitude to Frank. Not disclosing that her heart might pulsate somewhat more rapidly whenever she suspected an aspect. I will examine one last time the panels prior to the commencement of boarding. Concurrently within the aircraft, travelers were beginning to occupy their seats. The flight was at full capacity. As is customary among those for London was a combination of families embarking on an exploration of Europe, corporate executives in formal attire, and enthusiastic pupils preparing to study abroad. There was also somebody distinguished by his impatient demeanor. He gesticulated while conversing on the telephone. Positioned in a first-class seat, Harrison Whitmore, a millionaire of considerable means, renowned in the financial market for his hubris and perpetual superiority. Fortune magazine's compilation of the top. He successfully opted to fly commercial due to his private jet being undergoing maintenance is something that profoundly annoyed him. 15 minutes later, Avery and Mark completed the cabin inspection. All elements seemed orderly except for Roni figure that the captain was unable to dispel from her thoughts. The oil pressure in engine number 2 remained operational. The oil pressure in engine number 2 reached the threshold, but it remained stubbornly unstable, oscillating at regular intervals a few minutes. Generally speaking, it may be malfunctioning sensor. However, after accumulating numerous flying hours, she acquired the ability to differentiate between a reading error and air currents in warning. Contact Mark. I ordered the ground crew request a new check during the passenger boarding process. Frank stared in astonishment as he settled in. The plan has already been approved, and everything is satisfactory. He seized the radio and commenced asking the maintenance team regarding the opposite side of the cabin. During the flight, attendants were striving to arrange seating, everyone assisting with the stowage of luggage in overhead compartments and distribution. The initial seats were already equipped with headphones. The safety instructions within their pouches. Harrison, however, had another priority. Greetings, Martin. I am unable to afford this. Do not be concerned, this flight will be delayed. Depart in a few minutes. I will not miss it. Naturally, he didn't attend the meeting, he merely glanced at it. He closely monitored his watch, becoming increasingly frustrated with delays exceeding even a single moment. Shortly thereafter, Avery received the locked doors. Avery received clearance for pushback, however. The panel revealed a slight variation in the captain's behavior. Are you certain about engine number 2? Mark inquired. If you do not wish to remove it. Silently observing her solemn demeanor, he replied that she was not comfortable. Want to postpone for a brief period. Mark inhaled deeply. Individuals are about to. Avery expressed her discontent while rubbing her forehead, recollecting the statements of a former commander during Air Force training. It is preferable to exercise greater caution on the ground than to proceed. Superfluous aerial hazards that accumulated. She selected a significant portion to obtain the identity. Activate the aircraft's microphone internal audio system for women. Gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds, the pilot. The oil of airplane engine number 2 exhibits a pressure fluctuation. The maintenance personnel assured us that the aircraft is prepared for departure. But I am not. I will find comfort in that decision. I will not take off until I have complete confidence in the aircraft's safety for a 6-hour intercontinental flight across the ocean. Therefore, I am choosing to take a conservative approach. Due to caution, I am declining to fly this. What does aircraft signify for you at this moment? I remain uncertain. Ascertain whether we possess an additional aircraft accessible at this airport. I am aware of this. This is not the news you were expecting to hear. And I am deeply uncomfortable with this situation. This is necessary for you. Yet it is regrettable. One of the difficult decisions I must make is that I greatly prefer being here, grounding this decision rather than being at an altitude of 35,000 feet and confronting an issue that is our present circumstance. I genuinely express regret for it and thank you for your forbearance. A whisper of dissatisfaction and impatience manifested. Navigating the aisles was merely a tolerable nuisance, except for Harrison, who was already tense. Found it to be the final straw prompted him to rise and depart. He quickly approached the principal flight attendant, requested a conversation with the captain, and demanded an explanation. My timetable cannot be explained. Ignored in such a manner. Who behaved this way? Woman believes she is. He expressed dissatisfaction, gesticulating with his unencumbered hand. The flight attendant attempted to soothe him with a diplomatic smile. Sir, please remain in place. The captain is merely confirming your seat, that's all. I hope everything goes smoothly. I am confident that we will be departing soon. Receive such information directly from her, Harrison urged. However, Avery was not able to exit the cockpit at that moment. She required a review of the most recent reports submitted by Frank through the system. She asked Mark to explain the situation to the furious passenger. Excuse me, Mr. Whitmore, Mark stated as he approached. I am the first. The captain inquired of the officer on this flight. I must convey that we are unable to accept any hazards, even when all indications suggest an insignificant matter. Although she herself acknowledged that maintenance authorized the aircraft for Harrison challenged this takeoff. This pilot is obstinate and ridiculous. Mark persisted in squandering my time. Composure. Sir, we comprehend your frustration, yet soar without absolutes. Guarantee that the engine is impeccable as we do not engage in that activity. Are you aware of how to proceed? Each minute of delay incurs significant expenditures. Harrison squinted his eyes, indicating defeat. A multitude of individuals are awaiting service at the business. She can only postpone for me in London. The flight due to her intuition. Mark did not wish to extend the discussion. Please, Mr. Whitmore, place your trust in us. The captain's judgment is exceptional. An accomplished Air Force veteran. If there exists any suspicion of an irregularity at that point, Avery remained positioned within the cockpit seeking facts that may corroborate or dispute her intuition. It was not merely the sensor-recorded readings. Oscillating, however marginally, in the last 20 checks documented the preceding that night. She attempted to reach the engineer. A young man named Thomas Pierce is on duty, who worked at the hangar. Thomas? Please verify engine number 2. It is insufficient to merely examine the electrical, inspect the fuel line filter. Any factors that may be contributing to an oil. Thomas's tone expressed uncertainty on the affirmative. Captain. On the other end of the radio. I am en route with my crew, nevertheless. Chief Delaney considers it nonsensical that it does not, regardless of his opinion. Verify it and assert your position. Please open the engine. We will not take it. Halt until we ascertain she has deactivated their radio. Disregarding any objections from the chief mechanic, Frank was proficient, however he adopted a pragmatic approach to data on whether something falls within the margin. It is therefore permissible that Avery had observed incidents that commenced with negligible indications of failure and in the atmosphere. Even a little failure might grow within seconds. Once the mechanics ascended onto the wing and unfastened the lateral panel tension, some passengers grew inside the airplane. Initiated an inquiry with the flight attendants. What is the duration of the delay? Or will we proceed? A mother attempted to contact the dean. Entertain 2 restless children with an old man is playing a game on his tablet. That gazed out the window within. He whispered in a display of inquiry that he would prefer an additional verification. Repeatedly executing a forceful landing in the central region of the Atlantic at considerable depth. Harrison stayed seated, rolling his gaze fixed on every announcement he received, intensely typing on his phone to transmit correspondence to his contacts expressing dissatisfaction regarding the situation. Persisted for several more minutes. Avery received a message in the cockpit. Captain Thomas. We have discovered metallic debris within the fuel filter of engine number 2. We must replace the filter. Examine the potential cause of this. Essential if the aircraft were airborne. I propose that we refrain from departing until we. She sighed and conducted a comprehensive analysis, momentarily closing her eyes. The gut churned as it invariably did when validating a grave. She grasped the microphone and addressed Mark. Inform the tower that we are not present. Commencing takeoff. Notify the crew accordingly. Must await or perhaps alter aircraft. Mark's eyes widened. They will not be pleased. Avery retrieved the cabin audio system once again. It's me, Captain Reynolds, making the announcement. We have obtained a report from the maintenance team concerning engine number 2, signifying the necessity for further major repairs. Regrettably, we are unable to execute these fixes using. We must await the passengers on board. I am aware of the airline's directives regarding the need for a new aircraft or a prompt solution. This is causing disruption. However, we are unable to address it. Do not depart until we remedy the issue. Silence enveloped the aircraft. Flight attendants observed the passengers awaiting a response. There were some murmurs regarding a few inquiries about reimbursements and alterations to flights. Yet the majority of individuals appeared to tranquilize upon recognizing that there was, in fact, a genuine risk. Followed by a man seated in the center. The audience initially applauded hesitantly. Yet subsequently, additional passengers participated in the sound expanded, permeating the environment. Cabin until applause resonated via the aircraft. Captain Reynolds maintains silence in the cockpit for an instance of perceiving the unforeseen. She did not require recognition or applause. Only the assurance that she has executed the correct decision. Although at that moment she understood that notwithstanding the preliminary, the passengers comprehended the frustration. That their safety took precedence over anything else. Factor Harrison, however, rose immediately upon the conclusion of Aver's announcement. He proceeded to walk, traversing the short corridor, scowling at all individuals, advanced along his trajectory and arrived at the forefront nearby the cockpit, where the door was ajar. Require immediate communication with the captain, articulated vociferously. Avery heard him as he removed her headphones, extended an invitation to him despite her awareness it would be an uncomfortable discussion with him. Inputted while observing the instruments, and he observed the captain's figure. He noticed the emblem on her shoulder and vaguely recalled reading an article about veterans working in commercial airlines, which he found absurd. Captain, you have just notified us that there is a problem. We are currently impeded without a solution. I must travel to London today. My business relies on it, articulated Avery, without her tone. Professionalism. Mr. Whitmore, I have already clarified that the aircraft is unable to take off. We discovered metallic debris in the fuel. The filter serves as a definitive indication that the engine may fail during flight. I cannot jeopardize lives under any circumstances. Regarding several individuals. He snorted as though that reasoning was insufficient. And regarding myself, my financial resources and time are significant. The meeting is scheduled to occur in less than 12 hours. Will you provide me with a written confirmation of the reimbursement of payment to reimburse my loss? Experienced intense anger but inhaled deeply and raised her chin, reminiscing about her military training. Sir, I am aware of your time constraints. While military training is valuable, life is even more valuable. I regret to inform you that the decision is irrevocable. He lapsed into silence for some seconds, as though endeavoring to summon the fortitude to engage in a dispute. However, he subsequently opened his mouth, and curiously, he remained silent and merely diverted his gaze. He averted his gaze and departed with purposeful strides. Avery remains in the cockpit, experienced adrenaline surging through her. What ensued would be an extensive procedure collaborating with the airline to reroute passengers' baggage entirely for a probable alternative flight. She was aware of such delays incur substantial costs for the company. However, the expense would be more if they opted for air travel. A tragedy transpired while the aircraft stayed grounded. Thomas and his team validated the suspicion. Metallic particles indicated anomalies where inessential engine components may have resulted from an engine malfunction. Mid-flight over the Atlantic was a significant apprehension on the correctness of Aver's ruling. Consequently, the deplaning protocol commenced. Ultimately, Captain Avery Reynolds commenced the cockpit door and entered in the aisle. She inhaled deeply and raised her voice to ensure it was audible to all. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, I acknowledge that this is not the anticipated result for our flight. I am aware that some of you have overlooked significant appointments, and delays are never welcome. But I wish to convey the reason for my actions. Upon making this decision, the cabin became silent. Several passengers paused to listen. Prior to operating commercial airliners, I dedicated years to the United States Air Force. There, I learned that even the tiniest variation in a system can denote the distinction between returning, whether home safely or not. I have observed what occurs when little warning indicators are present. I have lost friends who were never truly present. The opportunity to make that decision regarding their foundation. And if there is one aspect I have that I will never take the danger off lives of those under my authority today. This aircraft was deemed unsafe. Sufficient. And that was all I required to ascertain for a brief interval. Silence prevailed until an individual spoke. One person initiated the applause, followed by another. Until the cacophony permeated the cabin. Passengers approached her to greet her with a handshake. An elderly lady burst into tears, grasped her arm and expressed gratitude for the support. An elderly man with grey hair donned a tattered garment. The leather jacket awaited. The applause subsided prior to directing his focus, profoundly shaped by years of experience. He examined her briefly before he offered his hand, stating, "Captain, I was a pilot. During the Vietnam War, I faced difficult challenges and decisions, and I understand their weight. You acted appropriately today. You have my approval." Avery shook his hand firmly as a gesture of respect. It is significant to receive such sentiments from an individual. "Thank you for your service." The man grinned, shook his head, and expressed gratitude. "You for yours." Prior to his utterance, Avery experienced a gentle pull on the sleeve of her uniform as upon looking down, she observed a young girl approximately 7 years old, looking up at her with "Are you a genuine hero?" With brilliant, admiring eyes, the girl inquired with childlike innocence. "Somebody who has not yet comprehended the world but can identify courage." When Avery knelt slightly to be at maintained eye level with her and smiled. "No, beloved. I merely perform what is necessary." The girl's mother approached. She rested her hand on her daughter's shoulder, as is the duty of heroes. "Thank you for ensuring our safety." Avery I simply nodded, experiencing a profound sense of appreciation. Ultimately, it was not about acknowledgement. It had never been. But observing those expressions of reverence and appreciation compelled her to recognize that she had once more discharged her obligation. She observed as passengers exited the aircraft. Several continued to bestow her appreciative glances, others expressing a subdued gratitude. And for the first time that day, she experienced the strain in her chest alleviates. Today, no one ascended. Although primarily, there was no cause for speculation whether they would ultimately return home. As the influx of passengers started to stabilize, Harrison re-emerged in the aisle he occupied. He held his cell phone and displayed an emotion entirely dissimilar to his previous. He was almost perplexed by his attitude, humiliated as though assimilating all information after the incident. He reclined against one dot at the vacant seats and gazed above at Captain Reynolds. Commenced almost he wanted to express that I was mistaken. You made the correct choice. I apologize for my rudeness. Nodded while preserving her serene demeanor. Acknowledge your significant commitment. And I apologize for the inconvenience. London. Harrison momentarily scratched his neck. My wife averted her sight and sent me, inquiring whether I was well. And I simply believed that if you had not created that decision, I may not even be present to respond to her by expressing gratitude. Thank you, Avery, for positioning her. Hand placed on his shoulder in a cordial manner. I am pleased to hear that you are well. I wish you the best. We can resolve your company's issues even from a distance. We will endeavor to cover the distance. Travelers to London securely. On another. He merely nodded. Appearing rather distracted, he felt relieved. And then he put his phone aside. He sighed and left without saying anything more. Soon after, Avery informed the tower that they would tow the aircraft to the hangar for repairs. For repairs? The airline CEO, who had a brief conversation with Mark regarding the internal system, has verified that all arrangements were made to reallocate the passengers, who would transfer to another plane. It would certainly result in a financial loss. The financial loss would be significantly smaller than any calamity that might occur, especially since it was not a long-term event. Prior to the relocation of the currently vacant aircraft, Avery descended the stairs. Asphalt. Observing the white and blue, she cherished the fuselage immensely. Nevertheless, she felt a sense of pride in her accomplishments. She recalled her days in the Air Force compulsion, when a seasoned instructor informed her machines do not tolerate errors in that regard. The moment those words resonated more distinctly than as she traversed the apron, she noticed Harrison in the distance, engaged in typing on his phone once more, albeit with somewhat greater composure. Expression. She also observed a family organizing their baggage in an effort to maintain. The youngsters were calm as she observed an elderly man. The identical individual in the hat who gestured subtly to her in appreciation and beyond. She believed she had fulfilled her duty. The captain subsequently advanced to the boarding zone where novel protocols would be executed to reallocate all individuals. She experienced fatigue yet simultaneously attained tranquility on that in the late afternoon at JFK Airport. There was neither a triumphal ascent nor a stunning emergence instead of landing. There was only the assurance that occasionally the choice to maintain everyone on the ground is the reality. Heroic deed in honor of Avery Reynolds. Any act of valor that averts an unnecessary risk is perpetually valuable in the wilderness. Wins contact. Standing tall to ensure no one traverses a route that few dare to follow. Proceed with solemnity and valor. Bread through fire. Through storm they hold the dark. Through fire and thunder. Skies. Brother. Sister. Side by side. Bound by obligation. Destined to combat through adversity. They ascend once more amid the downpour. Take the strength not intended, not for notoriety, but to acquire the contact. They designate an honor. Not for a moment. They carry the path for others via prayer. There is no second opportunity, no looking back. I shall pass this sacrifice through fire, through storm, through the darkest nights. They maintain their position. Skies. Brother. Sister. Side by side. Bound by obligation. Destined to combat through adversity. They ascend once more amid the downpour. Take the strength not intended for glory is not for renown. Yet for those who designate their moment when the e-contact time and the heavenly sky interruptions they endure undaunted. They do not diminish when fear resides and hope diminishes. They are the victors. They are the victors. The way they ascend again is strength not for honor or notoriety, but for those who call them by name. The flag flutters prominently. No? No. Someone stood before you. Endure. The guardians of the sky and land and heroes forged by passion and music,